How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Peterson. This is the place where you can learn how to master your health, your wealth, and your love all in one place. So I hope you look forward to another great episode with another great guest. Before we get started, I do want to remind everybody that the best way to support the show is to simply subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends. Also, if you want to get more involved with the show, check out our website at pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you have your pen and paper ready to take some notes on some great wisdom coming your way. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side of the episode.
And we are live. Today we have with us Tracy Brinkman. Tracy is a podcaster and founder at LeagueClickConvert.com. Tracy, thank you very much for jumping on today and joining us here. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me aboard. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. To get us started, why don't you tell everybody, who you are, where you're from, and what you do today, and then how you got here on this podcast in the first place.
Sure. Like you said, Tracy Brinkman. I'm actually just a little bit north of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and I've been lucky enough and I've lived all over the United States and actually spent a number of years in Germany. My father was in the military, so we moved every couple of years, and I usually I lean back on the fact that exposed me to so many varied types of people and personalities. I didn't grow up with that narrow mindset with that some people can go, well, that's the reason why I did this. But even with that diverse growing up experience, all over the United States and in Germany, I made a series of bad choices, and I think we all make them our bad choices when we're, having fun as a teenager.
I was just going to say, as we all do.
Exactly, right? But I think I really, stepped on parts of my body that I shouldn't have stepped on way too far into my life, in the 20s and the 30s, and, started toying with, a little too much alcohol, toying with, drugs and what have you, and even got into the selling side of things, which is, something no one should ever say they're proud of, but definitely not something I'm proud of. But I was actually spent a couple of days out partying a little too much, having a great time, and I came back and found that my condo had been ransacked. Ooh. Right. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? As I'm looking around, I started to realize, it wasn't thieves that had ransacked my place. The cops had actually raided my home.
Oh, man.
Right. They kicked the door in, and it was just like you saw in the movies, the couch is upside down, pillows and books and things are thrown everywhere. Cereal was had been poured all over the counters in my kitchen. And so
it was the cops that did this. It wasn't
the
police
it was the police that did this. And so, all the choices I had made up to that point in my life were kind of, I say, coming to a head. And so I was at the risk of losing everything I had, I'll say not even earned, but everything I had at that point, which included a new baby girl. My daughter, Talia, had only been born a couple of months prior to that. And so I, with the help of, my parents and my brother, Robbie, he helped me get clean and cleaned up my body, cleaned up my mindset. And I started rebuilding myself. And just prior to this, if I step back for a minute, I had come out of the military and I had started my own little computer consulting and programming business. And this was right at the opening of the .com boom. So I was doing well for myself. I was doing okay. And working wasn't a problem. I was doing something I enjoyed. But again, I started making all those bad choices that led me down this dark and bumpy road, that when I went back and started cleaning my life up, I didn't feel I was worthy of going back to that. And I started doing like side jobs in a warehouse and temp jobs in an office, to literally rebuild my self-confidence so I could get back to the point where I felt like, okay, I'm worthy of going out and serving someone else with the skill set that I had.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
I started doing that. I actually landed a role with the Coca-Cola company, and that took me from Southern California out to Atlanta. And again, I kept making those smarter choices and doing the right things. And then I was met with the birth of my second daughter, who unfortunately was born with what they referred to as a distended abdomen. When she was still in the womb, one of her blood vessels didn't develop fully, so
Oof.
her intestinal tract didn't develop like as it should. She was born with, if I remember correctly, about 23 centimeters of intestinal tract versus like 230 she should have had.
Oh,
So
wow.
she couldn't absorb enough food, nutrients through eating food like we take for granted to sustain her life. So literally over the course of 3 months, she went through 6 different surgeries as they tried a whole range of different things to save her life. I mean, they even went so far as taking what little abdomen they had and they cut it in a certain way so that they can form 2 lengths and then tie those together to double what she had, and it still wasn't enough. And I can't imagine all the intricacies of those surgeries on someone so small. So they ended up getting her stabilized, and she gets on the donor list. So we're waiting, and waiting, and you're doing everything you can just to keep hope up. I was lucky enough to find a passion for public speaking, and anyone who was willing to listen, and probably a few people that weren't willing to listen, heard about my thoughts on being an organ donor. Obviously, I had a skewed view. I was on one side of the topic, but I went to it. I went to Rotary clubs and Toastmaster events and women's auxiliary. Anyone who, like I said, anyone who was willing to listen heard my opinions. Sadly, Krista passed away at 18 months.
Oh, man.
But I was lucky enough, and here's the even tougher parts to really help folks understand. I was visiting her in the ER, and you could see, if you have a child, you understand this, you could see the difference in her demeanor, the way she was carrying herself. And it just wasn't like her. She was always very up and positive and always checking out the world. And, I went and visited her in the ER, and it was completely different. So I pulled the doctor aside and I asked the question I didn't want the answer to. If the organs became available today, would she survive the surgery? And they give you uh, the legal answer, right? And I
Yeah,
said,
the
look, just
doctor speak.
yeah, and literally I pulled him into a janitor closet. I said, look, it's just you and me. Right? There's no one else around. So if you say something and I say you said it, it's your word against mine. And I re-asked the question, and they looked at me and said, no. And so the question after that was, do you think she can get better? She'd be going through a series of events that she was slowly declining in her health. And he says, honestly, no. And at this point, she was on a respirator. So it was the decision now of, myself and her mother to say, we need to disconnect that.
Oh,
To
man.
allow, because if I'm keeping the mindset I was in is I'm keeping her here for my sake, not for hers.
Yeah.
Right. So made that tough decision, was lucky enough to be able to sit there in the ER room and rock her to sleep one last time. And then I just threw myself into work and personal development to keep from going back to places I had been before. I didn't want to back to, coming home one night and finding my door kicked open again. So I used the other side of the coin. And again, I threw myself into the Jim Rohns and
Oh, yeah.
the Brian Tracys and Zig Ziglars and Tony Robbins of the world. And luckily I had a job I loved and, just started stepping up my personal development and my skill game to keep myself on the right side of things. A long story, but it kind of tells a whole world of 2 different times where I was doing bad, pulled myself up out of the gutter, and then I was doing well and stumbled again and decided because of what I'd been through before, I wasn't going to go there once more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of why I love this story. I mean, so many people, when they think, they hear stories about people going through a hard time and then coming out of it, but that was really their only hard time. But, so many times in life, the hard times just keep coming, and you got to keep getting back up. You got to keep moving forward. And that's exactly what you did. Nothing can hold a candle to losing a daughter, losing a kid. That's one of the hardest things anybody can go through in life. So, real quick, I want to just kind of rehash your story. I mean, it was a
Sure,
really good
please.
one, really poignant. So it sounds like, you got started out there in Wisconsin. You traveled Europe all over the place, really opened your mind. And then even, late in life, a lot of people get started in the drugs and alcohol scene earlier, in their teens and then early 20s. And you got started a little bit later in your 30s. And you did drugs, alcohol. You were even selling drugs. And then one day you came home and your apartment had been completely destroyed, and it was actually the cops that had done that and not robbers.
Yeah.
And at that point, you kind of had a come to Jesus moment, and you had just had a new baby, and you realized that you needed to rebuild yourself. And a lot of times, we have these moments in life when you're just going forward. You're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, but in the back of your mind, you just kind of had shut that door. You're like, no, I'm fine. But then something happens, and you're like, wow, okay, I'm not fine. So that kind of happened to you, and you turned the corner and you decided to change your life, but you really didn't have you lost your self-esteem. You were kind of down in the gutter, and you couldn't bring yourself to get the level of job that you had before, and so you kind of got day labor jobs, odd jobs, until you felt good enough to kind of go out there and get your high paying tech job again. Then it sounds like you had another daughter, but she got sick. So you'd already gone through this really difficult time. You were in the gutter. You pulled yourself out by going to work, and really rebuilding your self-esteem through that, that creative output of putting value into the world. You had another daughter, but then she got sick again. No fault of your own. Obviously, this can happen to anybody. And it went to the point where you had to pull the plug on your own daughter, which I can only imagine what that would be like. And instead of going back down that dark hole of drugs and alcohol, you decided to, go the other direction. You already knew what was down that path. You knew what to expect, getting into the drugs scene. And so you decided to take the other route. And that's the important part, in my opinion, is that you decided. It wasn't, it didn't just happen. You decided to go this direction, and you threw yourself into personal development and work, which I think it's a great outlet for all of, I'm sure, this emotional turmoil that you had. You had to do something with it. And so you decided to shoot it in the direction of personal development and work. And that kind of leads us up to today, which, so congratulations on being here today. That is a lot for any one person to deal with in their life. So kind of tell us, you went through these ups, these downs, and you got out the other side. Give us the kind of the sunny picture, I guess, today. What are you doing, and what's your big passion in the world today?
I got a couple. I think these days, I think one of my big passions, and this is probably the tail end of the story, is connecting people is one thing. And I was lucky enough. So at all that previous story, I was in a previous relationship and marriage, which has since ended. And that was another one of those decisions where you're like, okay, I'm going to stick through this for the kids, right? I think in hindsight, being 2020, maybe I shouldn't have, but I decided to do that. And once I exited that, it was like, oh, wow. It's like when you first listen to an HBO story, that sound that's at the beginning. That's how I felt. And coming out of that, I met this most amazing woman. And it's like, if I could show other people about this, it's like making these connections make more sense. But that was a little bit of a tangent, but that comes back to the passions I have going on these days in the digital marketing space, as well as podcasting. A couple of years ago, for a couple of years, I used podcasting as a mechanism to put out some of the goodness like you're putting out here, about the personal development experience, how say, here's some steps you can take, and here's my experience inside the same thing. And most recently, as you mentioned, being a podcaster, I started another podcast that really focuses in on entrepreneurs, but it still keeps in that personal development world, because I find a lot of them, as I build these relationships, and you can see it coming full circle now, with these folks, that they're so focused on their business that their relationship is crashing, right?
Absolutely.
Or there are things going on in their relationship that's leaking over into their business. So you can't attack one without the other. You've got to, it's like if you looked at your life, and there was a spoke for finance, and a spoke for relationship, and a spoke for business, and a spoke for your finances, and a spoke for your health, and all those spokes made a wheel. If they're not even, you're going to have this bumpy ride as the wheel turns. So if you can keep those spokes level, whether they're at level 1 or level 57, as long as they're all equal, then your ride in life gets a lot easier. So it's about maintaining all of that at the same time. So that's what that podcast focuses on. So I have the business side over here doing all the digital stuff for the businesses, and that led me to the podcast, so I can wrap the two together and say, all right, here's everything all wrapped into one.
Awesome. No, I love it. And I mean, there's a few things that kind of popped out to me there that I want to kind of cover on. So for one, this podcast itself is about, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this because this is about mastering your health, your work, and your relationships. And that's what we really focus on, those 3 areas, because I feel like those are the most important areas in your life. And it's the 3 areas that you really do need to nail down in order to keep everything moving forward. And I mean, you said it yourself. A lot of times, people who start their own business or who are just very career oriented, they really focus in, which is absolutely required when you're building a business. You need to focus. You need to focus on one thing and just get it done. But they focus so much to the detriment of the other aspects of their life, and that can really take away from not only the other aspects of their life, but also their business. Because if you don't have good health, if you don't have solid relationships, then you won't have you won't be accessing all of your energy. You won't be accessing all of your abilities, which you can put into your own business. So kind of tell us, take us in that direction. Maybe you can pull some wisdom that you got from people on your podcast or your own experience. What is a good way for people to balance is the word that comes to mind, but I guess get all of those spokes aligned, or at least the same length, so they're not running on a crooked wheel?
I think one of the first things, this is one of the first things I did, and I was introduced to this by my now wife. She was a big fitness gal, and I wasn't in poor fitness. I was able to get out and do things, and I call it exercise on a regular basis. But she helped me understand that, well, yeah, you're doing okay, but if you spent 5-10 minutes doing these things over here, and it wasn't like I had to go spend an hour or anything. It was like 5-10 minutes. You'll be able to take it to the next level. And these are things I didn't know of. So I think really it's about examining first your habits, right? What habits do you have that are working for you or not working for you? I know, and I think events like that are going on right now at the time of us recording this with the COVID-19 experience, so many people are experiencing more time in their homes. And are they spending that time productively, or are they just becoming a pillow on their couch in front of the Netflix or whatever binge watching opportunities they have? So if you just step back and said, okay, well, what habits do I have going on, and be honest with yourself, you might quickly identify some opportunities where it's like, oh man, my business is a little askew because of this, but I'm spending 4 hours in front of Netflix. Oh, gosh, let me take just an hour of that and apply it over here, because I still want to chill. I still need my disconnect time, right, to get that balance. But if I rob an hour from over here and put it back into my business, now I can take that hour and identify maybe other opportunities that my attitude about COVID or what's going on in my business has kept me from seeing. And that almost spins into the next one is your attitude. So if your attitude is negative about one part of your one of your spokes, and very positive about one of your other spokes, well, then you're going to throw your energies off in that same disbalanced manner, right? You're going to throw you say, I know what kind of results I can get over here because I feel good about those. Well, this one over here, this spoke that's, causing that big, flat area of your tire, so to speak, needs your attention. And again, you may just need to lean on someone like yourself or a coach or your spouse. For me, it was my spouse with the physical exercising. And again, I was able to add it in like 10 minutes. So going out to someone who's an expert at that, listen to a podcast, read a book, go out and, check out some YouTubes and get some knowledge to say, all right, let me try that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Apologize. I pulled two things from that. You mentioned habits and you mentioned attitude. And I feel like that's both are very important. So first, you said it yourself, you kind of do an audit of your habits and figure out which ones need to be improved, or where can you change the time that you only have 24 hours in the day, where can you move that around to make it so that your habits are filling all the different spokes in your wheel. And once you do that, and on that topic, actually, you make sure that you have incremental improvements and don't try to hole out, start, a 20 mile run. If you want to get, if you want to improve your health, don't start with 20 miles, start with 1 mile and incrementally improve over time. And then you also mentioned attitude, because it really is difficult if you really do need to make a change, but you don't have energy, you don't have motivation to do that. Probably most likely because you can't see the end result. It's difficult to actually take the action to do that. And so you mentioned things that I think are also very important, which is accountability. Getting somebody on your side saying, hey, maybe we can work out together. Maybe we can work on our business together, anything like that to see. So you have a little bit of accountability to move you forward. And then also motivation. It's amazing. I do this myself if there's something that I know I need to do, but I just don't really want to do it. Sometimes I just need to spark my mind in order to get the little bit of juice that I need to get the action moving. So you can read a book on the subject or listen to a podcast, something inspirational like that, and that'll give you the motivation to keep going. So I love what you said there. Moving on just a little bit, we do try to keep these to around 20 minutes.
Sure.
And so I'm going to move us into the end of the show here. You've given us, you've taken us through a wide swatch of your life. And now, you went through this really hard time. But now you're here, you have a podcast, you have a business, you're doing digital marketing. And so, you're on the other side, you're in a very solid place. You have, your wife's relationship, which I'm assuming is pretty good. So through that time, obviously there are lessons that you learned. And none of us start out with all the answers. So if you could go back to the Tracy who, was just traveling Europe, just having the time of his life back then, and go back to that Tracy and just give him one piece of advice going forward in life, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one, because any one piece of advice I give myself back then might change the entire path. And I'm
excluding
kind of happy.
the paradox.
I'm happy with who I am. I think the one greatest piece of advice I can give would be build solid relationships that are two ways. I spent so much of my time in those darker days having one-way relationships where I thought I was giving to get. The previous lady in my life, I was like giving everything and getting just enough to keep me wanting more. Right? I was forgetting my own value in the yin and yang of a good relationship. So I kept forgetting the fact of how important I am. And I think the biggest question, here it is, the advice I give myself back then is know who you are. So many times I think people don't know who, can't honestly answer that question. So they end up traveling down roads that are probably well meant by the people that started them down those roads, but they don't agree with who they are at their core. You should be a doctor. Well, I'm not, I don't want to do that. It's not who I am, but I can make a lot of money doing it. So they start traveling down that road, right? And maybe they make a good doctor, but they're not happy and they're not fulfilled in the process. So, but if they knew who they were, and then they could start looking out in the world, they would start finding good relationships and good opportunities would present themselves. Maybe they find out, I shouldn't be a doctor. I should be, I don't know, a lawyer, or I should be a retailer, or who knows, maybe I just need to be a monk on a mountain, whatever makes them happy. That's the core. And to do that, so often we hear people say, you need to know your why. I think you need to know your who first. If I know my who, and then I connect it with my why, well, then the how almost answers itself.
Absolutely. No, I love that. You start with your identity, and it's, your identity is so tied in with the world, with your actions in the world. And so, that's really the place that you got to start. And I love that. Going back to the Tracy that was back in Europe, that's a really young Tracy. So that would be really good, pertinent advice for somebody, that age, is to stick to themselves. Not in the sense of social isolation, but in the sense of sticking to your own values, your own identity, and don't budge on that. There's many things in life that you can give and get, but when it comes to who you are, that's one thing that you really do want to, hold tight.
Absolutely.
Next question. Obviously, we get our information from many places: podcasts, YouTube, TV. Our friends and family, and books. And books are one of my favorite places to get information. And so I always like to ask people if they could give 2 book recommendations: one for business or work, and then one for just life in general, life wisdom.
This is going to sound funny. I think one of the best books I picked up many, many moons ago was actually Success for Dummies. It was one of the Dummies series that I think Zig Ziglar was joined up with the Success group for that. And it was just an awesome book. There were so many tips. And what was cool about that is I read it then, and that was in the probably mid-90s when I read it. And then I picked it up probably about 8-9 years later and started skimming back through it and found I was gleaning new gems, right? So those are gems that I was ready for 10 years later that I wasn't ready for when I first read it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great one. And I think at the same time, that's a great suggestion for anyone who's picked up a book is to go back and reread it years later, because now you're probably ready for a whole new set of opportunities inside the book. And I think after that probably would be, it's a classic, but the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I'm a big fan of history books. So anyone who's got the bug of reading or listening to, I listen to the Audible version of the biography of Benjamin Franklin. Inside of there, it's a long one, but there are so many time-tested tips that you can apply to not just your personal life, but definitely your business, that are just gold.
Absolutely, yeah. I read that, I think when I was in like high school, but I probably should reread it again because it's a really good book.
Yep.
But I love that you said reread books, because one of Seneca's books, On the Shortness of Life or something like that. I think it's On the Shortness of Life. Life is long if you know how to live it. It's a book. I've read it like, I don't know, maybe 6-7 times. And each time I'm just like, damn, there's another really good piece of wisdom that I didn't grab the first time.
Right.
So I love that. So Success for Dummies and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've read 7 Habits. It's a really good book. Success for Dummies, though. Maybe I'll have to check that out.
That's a good one.
Next question. You've already mentioned it before. Habits, it's kind of what drives your success forward. So what is the one habit that you feel contributes the most to your success?
Have a routine that fits with what I'm trying to accomplish. And here, what I mean by that is, so in the morning, when I get up, it's the routine is do a little workout, do the shower, and do a little gratitude moment, and then a little reading. and then after that, for me, it's playing my drums because I just love playing the drums that much. But I think if you could create some sort of routine for your day that starts you off well, and then helps you set your mind for the day. So the gratitude and whatever you might be reading, it could be anything, any one of the books that you get suggestions for, or whatever biblical or religious, spiritual book that you have at your side, and then pausing to be grateful for whatever you already have today. And I think that's the biggest one a lot of folks will stumble on, because they're like, well, I don't have anything. Well, you're breathing. All right, let's start there.
That's
right?
something.
Can you see 2 feet in front of you? Okay, there's 2, right? Did you eat this morning? Okay, there's 3. So if you start with the little things, and then the next morning, and I was that person when I first started doing it, and within a week I was reaching way out there in these things. And it's like, and I find that you start standing taller when you start honestly feeling grateful for these things you have in your world, and that changes your attitude for the rest of the day. So that's a big thing, and that alters what you just spend your time on. So that molds your habits to be more flexible to what it is you're trying to accomplish. Marrying your who and your why. I'll come back to that full circle.
Absolutely. No, I love it. So morning routines, that is a great habit, and especially in the context of adding gratitude to that morning routine. Love that piece of advice. Last question. You've given us a lot on the show today. You need to receive though as well. So if someone were to bring you something, what would you want to receive? Be it a new client for your digital marketing company, a book recommendation, anything like that.
What would I like to receive? Oh my gosh, I'm pretty happy. I have all the big things in life. Uh, I think a true friendship, and that's going to sound like such a platitude. I have a very limited number of true friends because, like I said earlier, it's like I'm me, right? You accept me for who I am, and I'll accept you for who you are. And not everybody can agree with that. And I've been lucky enough probably to have 6, 7, I can count them on these many fingers, 7, 8 people maybe that I've known for 20 plus years that agree with that kind of view on life. So if you were going to bring something to me, just bring me who you are. And if we gel, cool. If we don't, well, that's cool too. Maybe we can help each other in some other way.
Perfect. Yep. Absolutely. And if somebody did want to get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
The fastest way, you could go to the darkhorseschooling.com you mentioned earlier. My contact information's up there. Obviously, I'm on all the socials, Facebook and LinkedIn. It's Tracy Brinkman. Just do a search there. You'll find me. You can find me in the group on Facebook, the Dark Horse Tribe. It's just starting off, and it's really kind of a place for the folks that are resonating with the podcast to come and share ideas.
Perfect. So that is darkhorseschooling.com. If you want to reach out to Tracy, I will also put his LinkedIn profile in the show notes. If I have that, I didn't check if I did, but if I do, I will put that in there, and you can click through to reach out to Tracy to contact him. So again, Tracy, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I really appreciated it. I'm sure everybody listening and watching did as well. For everybody who's here, who came along on the journey with us, thank you guys for showing up. And obviously the best and only way that I recommend to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Other than that, have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
Thank you guys for sticking with us on another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I hope you got a lot of value out of that guest. Again, the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Also, check out pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com if you want to get more information about what we do and what we offer. I hope you guys have a great day and keep living in integrity with yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode coming shortly.